Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. In the next hour, I'm hoping to tell you a little bit about Flipgrid as a tool that you can use to help your learners with fluency, with speaking, listening skills. And this is just an overall tool that's just kind of fun. It's creative. It's kind of built for 21st century digital natives. So we're also going to engage in Flipgrid as students so that you get a chance to experience what your students will experience. And I'm going to show you how to create an account, how to begin to create activities, and how to find activities if you want to just start, if you want to start from scratch. Flipgrid is a video discussion tool. So basically you engage learners by providing them with a video. Usually it's a video clip of you, but it can be a video that you find in places like YouTube and Vimeo. It can be a video that you create yourself. So some of you are doing some flipped classroom or screencasts, so you can also include those videos. Basically what you do is you post a video or an image or some way to engage them in a conversation. You can pose a question to them, and then when they respond to you, they're responding to you through video. Okay, so it's very easy to use. They can use it on their phones, they can use it on their tablets, so they don't need a full-fledged computer to use it, and it's pretty intuitive. Okay, so again, I'm just going to ask those of you who haven't muted yourselves to please mute. Okay. All right, and the big green button is basically how students give you their response. So you're going to create a grid, and a grid is really the equivalent of like a class. You'll have different topics in there that students can respond to. When they click on the topic and they go to respond, there's going to be a big green button. So it's kind of easy for them to be able to see how to respond. But I think the one thing that I can say about Flipgrid is Flipgrid isn't really a tool that you're going to look for multiple choice, right answer format. It's really a learning tool. It's an engagement tool. It's a communication tool. So the activities can range from something as simple as, hi everybody, tell me who you are and give me a fun fact, right, to build community, to having students interview each other in different roles, to having them engage with some kind of an article that then they post a video just talking about how they felt after they read the article. So there's lots of different ways that you can engage with Flipgrid. I know one district on Long Island, which is where we're from, and they are posting math challenges in their communities. And students from all across the different buildings are answering the math challenges. And then at the end of the week, they're going to post the best responses in a Flipgrid. So it's really a communication tool and a way to build community. Okay, and I'm just going to flip through some of these reasons about why you might use Flipgrid. So we know that especially right now, there's lots of different tools that you can use. And if you don't mind, maybe in the chat box, type in some of the tools that you are using and finding success with, especially with your ELLs. Are you using other types of audio tools? Are you using Google tools, Microsoft tools? Are you finding success? Maybe write down what some of those challenges are so that we can talk about how Flipgrid might be able to address those. Okay. Now in Flipgrid, this last piece is important. After a child leaves you a video, you actually can create a rubric kind of on the fly. So you can give them feedback on clarity, on voice, and there's all types of criteria that you can place into the Flipgrid, but you can also give them personalized feedback. So the feedback that you give students is really important, right? Because it's a way for you to build a relationship with them. It's a way for you to be able to tell them precisely the things that they could be doing to get better. So in addition to having a rubric, you can have just text feedback, but the best is video feedback. So they leave you a video and you can click a button and you can record a short message to them. And I can't tell you how great it is to have a tool like that, especially today when I know and you know your kids miss you. So I think that you're gonna love it. But we'll practice it a little bit and you'll see if it's the right tool for you. All right, and because I'm going to share the presentation with you, I'm just going to add that there are some terminology, some vocabulary that you need to know. So grids are actually what you would equate to as a Microsoft team or a Google Class. Okay, so a grid is basically a way to denote your classroom. All right, so I might say I'm Mrs. Martini's third grade class. That might be the name of my grid. A grid can also
explain to me what you do. Oh crap! What did I do?
a separate name. So if you are working with students individually and you're supporting them, or you're supporting them in small groups, a grid could be that group name, or it could be an individual student. Okay. Topics are what you would call your discussion starters or your questions or activities. Now, so topics in Flipgrid are the equivalent of activities in other tools. Okay. Responses, this is how a child is going to respond to you. And replies, that's when you actually can have students reply to each other. Okay, I'll show you how to turn all those features on and off, because if you're going to use Flipgrid for the first time, you may want to just keep it simple and just have them respond to you. We'll get into these when we get into grading, but there are other ways that you can engage learners when you're using the tool. Okay, now you don't have to do this right now. We'll do this together in just a moment, but I'm just going to pause and take a look at the chat. Okay. Awesome, just so I can see some of the tools that you're already using. Perfect. And if you don't mind, let me see. I think I'm going to go ahead and put in flipgrid.com. Okay, so I'm going to have you all engage with me first as a student so that you get a sense for what students will see, and you'll learn to get comfortable in front of the camera. Okay, you are going to go to flipgrid.com now. So you're going to leave this tab open so that you can hear my voice. You're going to open up another tab in your browser, and you are going to go to flipgrid.com. Okay. When you get to Flipgrid, there will be, if you've ever logged in before, you're going to click on Educator Login and simply sign in with either a Google account or your Microsoft Educator account. Flipgrid is a free tool, so it's not going to ask you for money. Flipgrid is actually owned by Microsoft. Okay, for those of you who don't know, Microsoft bought Flipgrid about 2 years ago. So it is free for educators. Okay, if you've never used it before, you may have to click on Educator Sign Up, and it will ask you just for some brief information. So I'll just give you a minute to go ahead and log in. Okay. If you have used Flipgrid before, by the way, if you don't mind, I would love if you could just put your experience with it in the chat. And again, any questions that you may have. All right. So now on my screen, I'm going to flipgrid.com. I'm going to click on Educator Login. Okay. And we're going to start simply by just talking about what we see on the screen. When you first log into Flipgrid, what you'll notice is right in the center of the screen, you have tabs across the top. Those tabs include My Activity, My Grids, Mixtapes, Grid Pals, Disco Library, and Shorts. Okay. The place where you will be the most is in My Grids. Okay. My Grids is the equivalent of being in your Microsoft Teams dashboard, and it's the equivalent of being in your Google Classroom dashboard if you use those LMS tools. It's basically a place where you will see all of your grids or all your classes. Okay. Now, if this is the first time that you've ever used Flipgrid, you won't see any information in the middle of the screen. But since I've used Flipgrid across many accounts, what I see is that I've got 5 hours and 33 minutes of total engagement. So there have been 5 hours and 33 minutes of videos created on my grid. Okay, so this includes responses back to me. Okay. If I scroll down, because I already have grids, you'll see that each grid is just listed, okay, one after the other. And each grid gives me a little bit of information about it. So I have a banner that will take up about a quarter of the screen when the kids go to your grid. So it's just a way to customize your grid. I have the name of the grid. the type of the grid that it is. We'll talk about types in just a moment. Then I have a flip code. So a flip code is similar to a nickname. If I were to ask everybody to go to flipgrid.com right now, you would enter a flip code, okay, called fave topic cells, fave topic cells, and you would be able to log in and use and answer the topics. So I'm just going to stop for just a second. I think somebody is not on mute. And it's kind of weird. Okay. All right. I think you took care of it. Good. So across the side again. So I've got my banner, I've got the name of my grid, the type of grid that it is, the flip code that I'm going to share with my students. I have the number of topics, or the number of questions that I'm asking students, the number of videos that have been posted across all of my topics, the date that it was last updated. I have a share button. So if I click on the share button, I can share this and put it in the chat if I wanted to, or I can copy this link, I can send it to Google Classroom, I can share it on Remind, and I also have a QR code. So some of these things, QR codes, you may or may not share that, but if you were in a classroom setting, you might print out a QR code and put it around the classroom so kids could access it easily. So one of the things I want to just mention is that, you know, I don't know how you're communicating with your students. You're communicating across a whole range of different platforms. So the most important thing for you to know is what your grid URL is, okay? This is what you're going to copy and send to your students in whatever way that you do. The next button says actions. So actions allow me to do certain things with that grid. It allows me to edit the grid. So if I wanted to change the banner or change other settings, I can do that. It allows me to add co-pilots or co-teachers, right? So we know that sometimes we are working with another teacher, maybe a content area teacher, maybe they're using Flipgrid, so they can add you as a co-pilot. And co-pilots can do basically what the teacher can do except to delete the grid. So co-pilots can go in there and they can add topics, they can assign topics, they can check work and give feedback, okay? Now, I don't know about you, but if you're using a lot of technology, you're probably getting inundated with notifications. So in addition to being able to stop notifications on your phones, you can also just click on grid notifications here and adjust the amount of times that you get an email every time somebody responds, or weekly, or you've got different options here. Finally, you always have the ability to export all of the data or all the videos. If you wanted to take them out of this platform, put them somewhere else, and you have the ability to delete the grid, okay? So your actions buttons on the grid page are actions that you would place for your grid. And finally, there's a pencil here. So I'm just going to click on edit grid so you can see that I can, at any given point in time, I can change the name of my grid, okay? I can customize the flip code to make it easier for your students. So if you are, let me go back to my third grade example. If I'm Mrs. Martini, grade 3, I might change this flip code to flipgrid.com/Mrs. Martini, grade 3. Okay, and that would make it easier for students. So as long as nobody else has taken that code, you can use it. Okay. Now, grid type. When we go to create our first grid, I will go over grid type in more detail, but the gist of it is this particular grid I have created so that any of and all of you who are joining me can join my grid. Okay, so I've made it public, but in your cases, you're probably going to have your students join with their school email. Okay, so you would have selected school email, and that just would stop anybody who didn't have your school email from joining your Flipgrid. Now, super important, adding a grid password. So again, this is a public grid right now. So if I wanted to, I could have the option to add a grid passcode if I didn't want just anybody to be able to join it. Okay. I'll continue down. This is where you'll find your notifications. So I'm saying I want to receive a notification every time a new video comes in. This is just so that I remember to give you feedback. But if you have your class and you're going to be using Flipgrid on a regular basis and you're going to be in Flipgrid, you probably don't want to be notified every time a new video comes in. You may want to do it daily, weekly, or never, all right? So I'm just going to continue down a little bit, and this is where you can change your banner. And you've got lots of fun themes to choose from, okay? After you make your changes, you'll just update your grid, all right? So that was in my grid section, okay, which is where we're going to spend the majority of the next 15, 20 minutes. All right. Now, if I want to see what's in my grid, I'm simply just going to click on it. All right. But before we, yeah, let's do that. Okay. So here's my class. Remember I said that a grid
did I write on my bed?
is an equivalent of a class. Okay. And Anthony, I'm just going to have you check to make sure everybody's muted and stays muted. So in my class, I have more information, okay? I will tell you that the first couple of times I used Flipgrid, every time I clicked on a new button or a new place, I had all this information, and it was a little bit like information overload. But I promise you that after a while of using Flipgrid, you'll just see it as something that's super beneficial, but it could be a little bit busy. Okay, so you've got your title of your grid. We went over the flip code, and you've got the ability to add a co-pilot. And below your grid details, you're going to have your topics. So the first thing that you might notice here is that I have 4 different topics. They're all lined up. This is the way that the students will see my topics. So they'll see a big banner, then they'll see my topics underneath. I can always change the order of the way that my topics show up simply by clicking and dragging. The other thing that you'll notice is that, again, you've got this actions button here. Each topic has either an image, okay, or in the case of the weekly book review, this is actually a video of myself down here, okay? You have the title of each topic. You also have a view button. So this is what I love about Flipgrid that not all tech tools have, is the ability to view it as a student. So I know that this is really important to us, especially because we are trying to also simultaneously, as we teach, we're also trying to troubleshoot for our parents and our students at home, right? So you can't troubleshoot if you don't know what the kids are seeing. So what I want you to do is just know that you've got this view button. So this is what Flipgrid looks like for me. But if I click on the view button, this is what Flipgrid will look like for my students, okay? Now, if your students are using Flipgrid on their phones or on their tablets, it looks pretty similar, okay? All right, so I'm just gonna scroll down and you'll see that one of the things I did with my topics is I could have numbered it. I said start here. Now I could have numbered the 001. So if you have a bunch of topics for your students to choose from and you want them to do them in a certain order, just like in some of your learning management systems, you want to order those assignments, okay? Especially if you're scaffolding for them. All right, so this is my first topic. This is what my student will see. They will see a little animated image. They will see some text, and they'll see some instructions. So for all of you, I'm going to say, this is going to be our first activity. So all of you will go to Flipgrid, and I'm going to give you the code, and you will come to a page like this. My instructions say hello and share a fun fact about yourself. So there's 2 things here that I want you to pay particular attention to, especially because any images and pictures that we leave our students are going to help them understand, right? So there's a little image of a hand here. Okay, so this says say hello. And then there's just a little smiley face. There are several websites out there where you can copy and paste emojis, okay, into like text. You can also do this for Google Classroom and some other tools that you use. So even though there's no emoji like feature within those particular tools, you actually can find emoji keyboards and then just copy and paste those images in here. So that's one way to help. The other way is this immersive reader feature. So Microsoft, the company, has a feature to help struggling readers, people who can't read, people who have difficulty reading, people who need the text read to them. And that feature is called Immersive Reader. Some of you may have seen Immersive Reader in other tools. I believe Immersive Reader is in Nearpod. Immersive Reader is definitely in all your Microsoft tools. Immersive Reader is also in Buncee. So just pay particular attention. It's in Pear Deck. Pay particular attention when you're using those tools now, because sometimes you don't see the Immersive Reader feature. Sometimes it's something you have to turn on. But I'm going to click on the button and show you what it does. So what Immersive Reader will do is it will take that text that's on the screen, place it into a different view, and then now you see the text is much bigger. Now I can see that this hand is waving hello, and I have a little button down here at the bottom that says play. Okay, so I'm going to just play this. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but you'll be able to see the words highlighted. Okay, so when you engage in the activity, I recommend that you go ahead and click on that Immersive Reader button if you haven't seen it before. Now, there's lots of other things I can say about Immersive Reader. I can actually slow down the speed. So how great is that? Sometimes we need it a little bit slower. I can change it from female to male voice, okay? And then on the upper right-hand side, I have even more text preferences. So if I wanted to change the size of the text, okay? If I wanted to make it a dark theme, right? So one of the things that we struggle with is sometimes we send work to our kids and maybe they can't read it completely, or they have difficulty with some of the words. Maybe they need like a dictionary next to them. So these tools are meant to help immensely, by the way. On the upper, so these are just text preferences, right? So I was able to change a couple themes and make the text bigger. There's also a way to increase and decrease the spacing. I have some grammar options here as well. So I'm just going to turn my syllables on and off. So this could be something that you might say to them when you click on Immersive Reader. In order to read the instructions, I want you to always turn on the syllables so that you can start to see how that word is broken out. And then my last icon here at the top are my reading preferences. So reading preferences is great because sometimes instructions come in a big bulky paragraph. So you can actually put the line focus on and then play the reader.
Nice.
Okay, so I know that you can't hear that, but you did see the words being highlighted. Basically what's happening is that I slowed down the voice, so every word was being spoken, and then even when it came to the image, there was alternative text. So when it got to the image, it said a waving hand says hello. Okay, so they'll be able to see and hear the words being spoken out loud and what those images mean, right? Two big things here too for our ELLs especially, or even our children who have different difficulty with vocabulary. There's a picture dictionary. So if a child doesn't know what a word means, they can simply click on it. They can click on this little icon to listen to it.
And the best part about this is that there are 80,000 pictures in the picture dictionary. So this does allow for students to be able to make connections between those images and the word, the way it's spelled, and the sound.
There's a few questions in the chat that I wanted to ask directly. So I wanted to speak to the student IDs. And people were asking about creating student IDs as opposed to just giving them the code. And that's just when you're building the class, you can upload, multiple students. You have that whole thing available, the CSV file and all that?
Yes, absolutely. So when we go to create a Flipgrid, I can show you the difference between the email accounts, if your children don't have email, or if you want to use student IDs instead, yes, you can make nicknames for them and then you can upload.
Thanks.
So yes, absolutely. Okay. So last but not least, the Immersive Reader. And I know this Immersive Reader could be a whole professional development session by itself, but it's important because when we use tools like this, if we have instructions, we want to make sure that they're clear to our students and they're able to know what it is that we're asking them to do. You can actually translate into a different language. So I'm just going to choose Spanish, and I'm going to say translate the whole document. Alrighty. And now what it did, and remember, it's using AI, so it's using artificial intelligence. It's doing its best to translate correctly, right? But there might be some things that don't translate over well. I will say this is really good translation though. You are able, and the child is able to, more importantly, click from the original document to the document that's translated, okay? So they can go back and forth, so they can listen to it in English, then they can click on the translated version, and it will speak in that second language, so they can hear it in both English and their native language. Okay, so I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it is helpful for me, so hopefully it's helpful for your children. Okay, so after the instructions, they're just going to simply scroll down, and there's going to be a big green button, right? So I'm going to click on the button, and I'm going to show you what students would see. They will be asked to log in. So this is where, if you had a student ID for them with a password, this is where they would put it. But I'm just going to log in with my Google account. Okay. They see a little camera shot, okay, with some icons on the bottom. So I have the ability to add filters. I won't spend too much time here, but I do have the ability to add text. So if your prompt was asking them to respond with a fun fact, okay, you could ask them to use the text tool and say, whoops, not sure what happened there. Okay. Okay. So they could respond with text and put that in their video, okay? Because I get that question a lot, like, what if I want my kids to just type something in and have their voice recorded so they can just type? There's also emoji stickers, they're called stickers here. So we know that some students don't like their faces to be seen, so they can certainly put a sticker there so that you can't see their face, okay? There's also a drawing tool. So as you use these tools more and more, you'll find that sometimes it makes sense. So I could have them, they have a touch screen they can use. They can like write out an equation or something and solve a problem. There's also a whiteboard tool. So I can click on my whiteboard tool and make it completely white, okay? And then have them draw in here. And finally, they can also bring in a photo sticker. So I'm just going to click back. I'm going to clear that whiteboard, and I'm going to leave this like this. And remember, your first activity is going to be, you're going to record yourself saying hello, and then you're going to give me a fun fact, right? So after I'm happy with all the little objects that I want, I'm going to go ahead and click on the record button. Hello, everybody. My name is Blanca, and one fun fact you don't know about me is that I'm an artist. Not a famous one, but I like to paint. Okay. So a couple things you'll notice here. I could just pause it and then decide that I wanted to add something else and just click on that button again, and it would just continue to record, okay? What you may notice too is that there's a little white line. So there's an outline around the record icon. That just tells me how much time I have left. So one of the things you can do is when you create a Flipgrid, you can designate how long you want students to be able to have to respond, okay? Why is this important? Because let's say that you have a class of 25 children and you give them 2 minutes each to respond. Some of your children will take it all the way to the 2 minutes, and then you'll have 50 minutes of viewing. And if you want to use Flipgrid on a regular basis, this just means that you'll have a lot of videos to go through, okay? Once you're done though, you're going to click on next. Okay, so it'll just run through. You'll hear yourself. You'll decide whether you want to add more, you want to continue, right? And this is the important piece. When you click on next, it will ask you to take a selfie. That selfie is going to be the thumbnail that shows up in the grid. So there's going to be all these spaces. This is a selfie that gets taken after the video. So one thing that I will say is that if your students have never used it, just let them know, because this is the time where they start to get confused. Like, what do you mean? I just did my video. Did it not work? No, it did. It's just that the computer will ask you to take a selfie afterwards. All right. So I'm just going to click on next. Okay. And I'm getting ready to submit my video. I can put in a nickname as a display name, or as a teacher, like if a child puts in their full name and you don't want them to, when you go in to check their work, you can actually fix their display name. Okay, this is important in case you want to like build a community Flipgrid where you have children saying what they're thankful for, and you want to share that with all the parents. You may not want all the parents to have everybody's real name. Okay, so go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and complete the video. It's going to give me a direct link to my video if I want it, and I put down that I would allow people to download their videos and their pictures. You can turn that off so that kids don't have that ability. Okay, and now that I'm in my Flipgrid, I can simply refresh and I can see my video underneath. Does everybody see that? Now, a question you might have is, Blanca, does this mean that everybody sees everybody else's video before I see them? Because I want to moderate, right? Because you never know what kids are going to say, especially when they're far away from you. So yes, there is a moderation feature. And so I could, technically, I could turn on moderation, which by the way, I recommend. And then you would have the ability to make those videos active after you saw them. All right. So let me hop back into Flipgrid. And now I'm going to give everybody the code so that you can come in here and you can play with the video feature. Okay, I think it's important that you understand how this works, and then I will show you how to create your own grid. All right, so I'm going to make this nice and big. And all of you are going to now go to flipgrid.com. I know that you guys, I think you've already created your accounts, but what you're going to do is you're going to go to flipgrid.com, the main page again, and you're going to enter a code. And let me see how big I can make this code. Okay, you're going to put in the code 265FC422. That'll take you right to this activity. Okay, so you're going to go to flipgrid.com. All right, you're going to say join with code, and you're going to type in 265FC422. What I'm also going to do, I'm just going to give you a chance to like type that in. Okay, I'm going to, on a different computer, I'm going to write down the code. I'm going to put in a link in case you need it.
Blanca,
Yes.
can you just once again tell people how to get to the grid
Yeah, I'm putting the link in
the chat? Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the chat. Okay. So if you're in Flipgrid, okay, I'm just going to go to my Flipgrid page. You want to sign out. Okay, you're going to log out with your teacher profile. I don't want to do that, but I'll do it. Okay. And when you log out, you'll see a little sign that says looking to join your discussion, enter your Flipgrid code, and then you're going to type in 265. So I'll put that also in the chat, 265 FC 422, I think, right? Just going to have to enter to make sure that that's correct. Yes. Okay. So I'll try not to talk too much because whenever I do this, my voice ends up in the back of all your audio. If anybody is having trouble, just let us know in the chat box and we'll get you some. Yeah, good question, Bonnie. I should have just let everybody sign out. Okay. Don't forget to click on that immersive reader button too, so that you get a feel for what that feels like and looks like. Barry, go ahead and go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen where you see your name. You're probably logged in as an educator. You just want to click on the little drop-down arrow and log out. And when you log out, you'll be prompted again with a different screen, and it'll say, want to join a discussion, enter a code, and just type in the code there. Okay, Angelique, the immersive reader button should be in the topic details. Okay, underneath where it says share fun facts about yourself. It's going to be the blue circle. Right here. Okay. And Madeline and Angelique, I don't know if you have found the immersive reader button yet, but the immersive reader will be right underneath the instructions. Oh, excuse me, guys, sorry. Okay, I can see that I have 4 responses already. Awesome. Okay, Marissa, what you need to do is just continue to scroll down your screen. Sometimes you don't see that big green button right away. You have to scroll all the way down to the end of that page. Marlene, yes, please. Please submit. Now I'm going to go ahead and make some of these responses hidden, because if I had moderated the chat, that's what they would look like. All right. I'm going to just refresh, and then I'm going to bring everybody back. So just go ahead and submit if you don't mind. I do want to give you an opportunity, though, to go through the whole process of taking that selfie, so that again, if your students are going to do that, because they have to do that, you want to be able to answer their questions or preemptively give them the instructions that say, after your video, take a picture and then click on next. Oh, Gabrielle, I'm sorry. Well, when you watch the recording, you'll be able to use it again. That could just be a technical issue. Okay, I think these are all the responses I'm going to get. So what I want you to do is just hop back into the Zoom page. Okay, so that you can see my screen. And I want you to notice a couple of things. So on the teacher side, I have been watching the activity the whole time. And as I refresh my page, I notice a couple of things. I notice that I've got 15 responses to my prompt. I know who's responded just by looking down the row, okay? If I click on name, I can actually sort by last name, okay? So it's just sorting by last name. I can, as you come in and you respond, your responses come up at the top. So I know that Angelique was, out of all the people right now, she was the very last one to respond to me. As I look across the response tab, I see that she's active. Now, when you create a grid and it's moderated, all of the responses will actually show up as hidden. Okay, so I'm hiding them right now, but all your responses will show up as hidden. So when it's hidden, when you go back to that question, you don't see any of your peers' responses. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to turn on the moderated view, but just know that when you see the responses, they'll all be hidden and you can make them active after you look at everybody's video. All right. So I'm going to start with Angelique. Angelique, you're a brave soul. Thank you. And I'm just going to click on her. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Angelique. So a couple of things that I see here. I see there's a little video of Angelique. I see this leave a vibe up here, wording, which we'll talk about in just one second. I see a star, so I can feature Angelique's response in my grid, which just means that she'll be up in the front at the beginning of the grid, right? If Angelique had asked a question and I said, oh, maybe I want to create a topic from this question, that's called a spark. So I could click on that and I could create a topic directly from this video, right? Because sometimes you get some really good responses, questions that you hadn't heard before, so you can directly create another topic from that. I can also add a response to a mixtape. So we'll talk about mixtapes in a little while. All right. Okay, so I also can now reply to her. So we're still on the left-hand side of the screen. I can reply to Angelique and I can respond by video. Right, and all that does is it takes me back and I can say, Angelique, thanks for your response. Now I could have asked another question, could engage during some additional conversing, okay? And again, it's taking a picture of me. And now Angelique will see that I have responded to her with my own video, okay? Now that is all private to her. Nobody else is gonna see that. I'm gonna go ahead and submit it, okay? All right. And it tells her that there's one view. All right, so that's on the left-hand side. I'm responding with video on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I have 3 tabs. So it even says, this video will only be available to Angelique. It says, score Angelique's video based on the topic criteria. So there was an ideas and a performance rubric, which I'll show you. Okay, so I'm just going to give her a 5 out of 5. And in addition to that, I can leave her a text message. So that's 3 different ways that I, as the teacher, can leave her feedback. I can videotape myself. I can have a grading rubric associated with it. And I can say, okay, love your smile. There you go. You have that many characters. So a couple ways that you can send this back to Angelique. Now, all of you signed in with your either educator accounts, I'm assuming, or you might have signed in with just a regular Google or Microsoft account. I could email the feedback. So if I click on email feedback, Angelique will get an email from me to whatever email address she gave me. But some of our kids are not going to have email, and some of our kids are not going to have, you're going to give them a student ID. So they can simply come back into Flipgrid and read and see the feedback that you left them, or you can go ahead and copy the feedback link and then using whatever platform you use with students, if you're sending them a chat message in Teams, if you're sending them a private comment in Google Classroom, you can do that, and that's what they'll get. That's where they'll see this little pop-up and they'll be able to see your video and the text that you sent them. Okay, so that's your feedback tab. If you click on edit, right, this is where you can see, oh, okay, this is still hidden, so now I'm going to make her active. All right, now her display name is Angelique S. Maybe I want to take the S away, okay. And then actually the very first line says a vibe. So a vibe is simply a fun way to like place a little bit of fun text on top of the video. So if I had asked all of you to give me a fun fact, and Angelique had said that she plays the piano, I might have written plays piano on top of her grid. All right, and then I'm simply going to click on update response. Now, I am going to look at all of these and I will respond to you so that you know exactly what it feels like to get an email back. But for right now, I'm going to, awesome. Wow, that was great. So there's a lot of things I could put here on top of her video. I can say salsa queen. All right. So, or I could have said dual language. I could have said a lot of different things, but this just kind of indicates to everybody that is looking at the grid, kind of something special about that response, right? Okay. So I can continue going. So I'm just going to update. I'm going to continue to scroll through. Okay. I'm going to continue to scroll through, and I can leave a 5. All right. I can look at my feedback. So typically what I do is I do all the feedbacks. So I just scroll through and I listen and I give numbers and I listen and I give, awesome. All right. And then I go through and I click on edit and then I leave the vibes. Okay. This does a couple things. Well, number one, because the videos are short, I don't mind going through them quickly, and I only have 20 or some odd responses. So for me, maybe it'll take me 6-7 minutes to go through all of the grading and to listen. But you're going to find your own groove, and you're going to find your own way of doing this. So, you know, try it doing it one way, or then you can just do the feedback and edit, or maybe you don't want to do any vibes right now and you just want to do feedback. When you give the feedback, it's saved automatically. Okay, so you can just continue scrolling through all of the different responses using the arrows. All right.
Blanca,
yes.
may I ask a question? We have a
Sure.
question in the chat regarding the video feedback. Is it possible to continue a conversation with the student? In other words, they have a post, you reply with a video response. Can they then reply to you again based on that video response you gave them, or they would have to create a new post, right? It doesn't have that kind of a, actually, you tell me. In other words, carrying on a conversation back and forth.
I know what you're saying. So the teacher and student, I'm not sure that you can do that, but I will find out.
Okay.
But a student to student, you could. And there's a couple different ways. So let me think about that and kind of write it up a little bit. I've seen some really great examples where students interview each other, actually back and forth. And so when the video plays, when this video stream plays, you see one child, then the other child, then the first child, then the second child. Okay. So there are ways to do that kind of. So if there's a way to do that, I'm thinking that there's a way to do the teacher, but I've never done that before. So that's a good question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So once I am done, I'm just going to click out of here. Okay. And what you'll see is, you see how I had that grading rubric? So I can look quickly down the feedback column and I can see who I graded and who I didn't. Okay. The other thing that I'm going to see is that some are active and some are not. Remember, I made some of you hidden. So let's say that I went through everything and I wanted to make everybody active so that you could all see each other's videos. I don't have to go one by one and make you all active. What I could do at that point, since I've already watched all the videos, is I could simply come all the way up to the top, and at the top of my list, there's a little checkbox. So that will allow me to select all of the responses at once. And then if I go to actions, I can say activate responses. And that very quickly would just place everybody in the grid. Okay. So as a teacher, that's what you would be doing. All right. And I know it's always, you know, sometimes it's difficult to like, oh, it's kind of easy to create the grid and the topics, but then what happens on the teacher end? So this is what would happen. You see your responses come through. You get an opportunity to go through each response. You can give them a vibe. You can star them to feature them. You can send them some comments. Right. So it's actually, it's easier than some other methods to grade. All right. So let's go back to our main grids. All right. And now what I'm going to do is actually take you through the process of creating your own grid, because I know now you're probably like, oh, I would like to do this. Right. Some of you have already started to do this. So in a new tab, I want you to go to flipgrid.com, and I want you to sign in with your educator sign-in. Okay. Sign in with your educator sign-in. It's going to bring you to your My Grids page. And now we're going to start to create our own grid. Okay, I'll just give you another 20 seconds to do that. Okay. So once you're in My Grid, you're going to see the red button on the upper left-hand corner. You're going to go ahead and click on Add New Grid. Okay. And this is where you are going to name your grid. Okay. I'm going to say this is Mrs. Martini's 4th grade class. All right. So you do have up to 45 characters. So now you have to select a grid type. So I mentioned earlier that most of the time we're selecting school email, right? So if you are a G Suite for Education school district where everybody signs into Google, or if you're a Microsoft 365 school district, everybody signs in Microsoft, I'm going to recommend that you use school email, okay? But sometimes, even though our schools use that, our little kiddos don't have those accounts. So you could select student ID, okay? And if you select student ID, I'm going to click on next in just a moment, and I'll show you what that looks like. But again, student ID, I'm only recommending if you actually do not have any kind of an account for your students. All right. Last but not least, you do have the ability to create a flip code. And this is the code that students would use to join your grid. So the code that I gave all of you took you specifically to the topic. And sometimes you're going to want to, that's the link that you're going to post like in Google Classroom or in your team, because you want kids to just go straight to the topic. But if you want to give, if you're going to use this tool a lot and you want to give kids like, you know, you want to just give them a link so that they always remember to go to your class. Like I said, here, I could simply backspace the characters that it gives me, and I could call it Mrs. Martini, grade 4, right? And as long as that particular group of words has not been taken before, you'll be able to just say to everybody, okay, guys, you're going to Flipgrid, and everybody knows, oh yeah, flipgrid.com, Mrs. Martini, grade 4, right? So after a while, if you use it a lot, that might be what you want your students to do. But my guess is that you're using some kind of platform to share this with your students. So you'll probably be sharing the code and not just the code for the grid, but you'll be sharing the code for the topic. Okay, so remember, I'm selecting student ID, but most of you, I'll bet, are selecting school email. So let's see what they look like. If you select student ID, you'll be brought to a page where you can either manually type in student's name, and you can add a student ID here. Okay. All right, so I'm just adding a student ID, and I'm just going to continue to add, okay, student ID. And then I'm going to click on next. All right. And it's going to say my list has been created, print out my QR codes or the entire list. And if I print the student list, it's just going to give me a bunch of QR codes that students can use to scan. Okay. So my flip code is going to be Mrs. Martini, grade 4. My student ID will be Bianca. I'm going to click out of this just to show you the other way to do the grid. Okay, this is if you do school email. Okay, your dialog box is going to look a little bit differently. It's going to say add school email, so it will automatically pick up how you signed in. So if you signed in as, I don't know, Oneonta, then it'll probably say like oneonta.k12.ny.us, and you're not going to add anything else, okay? Sometimes we know of school districts that want to work with each other, and so what they would do is they would put their 2 school district domains in this space, all right? And then you're going to click on next, and it will go ahead and create your grid. Okay, so you're just going to click go to your grid. All right, and you'll see it automatically picks a banner for me. So I can always go in here and edit it. Right, and then the other thing that you're going to notice is now you have your own grid, and your very first topic is already made for you, which you can decide to use or not use. You can always delete it, but your first topic is that same activity that you and I just did, right? Say hello on Flipgrid. And you can always go in here and edit it if you want, but if you wanted just kind of a quick like way for kids to automatically engage with you, you could just use that one. All right, so let's go to customize our grid, because there are some things in there that I want you to take a look at. So now that you have your own grid, under grid details on the right hand side, you'll see that pencil. So go ahead and click on that pencil. For those of you who have co-teachers, by the way, you might want to go ahead and click on add a co-pilot and just type in your co-teacher's name. Okay, you may as well do that now since you're here. Okay. So go ahead and click on edit grid. I'm looking at some of the questions. If you're adding a grid to Nearpod, you would have to make it public, correct? Question mark. I don't think so. I think it depends. I think if your students are logged in with their into Nearpod using their school account, you could just simply place a link for your grid in there. And then when they clicked on it, it would just take them into Flipgrid. Right. So I'm going to recommend that we don't make anything public, right? Just to make sure that students' names aren't shared or links to students' videos aren't shared anywhere. Okay, so I'm going to update my grid. This is where you can change your name. Again, you've got your flip code. Flip code can be changed, by the way, at any point in time. So if you forgot to customize your flip code, you could come in here and change it. It's going to give you information that you've already selected. But now, remember, this is your grid now. You were looking at my grid before. Now you can start to customize what you want people to be able to do or not do in the grid. So here are some of my recommendations for children. I don't want to be notified every day because I'm going to use Flipgrid every day. So I'm going to say I'm going to be notified weekly. Now, I could also be a new educator and I'm like, oh, I want to make sure that I see every video that comes through. So maybe I'll choose new video. All right. But my recommendation, if you're going to use this a lot, is since you're going to be in Flipgrid anyway, you'll see all of the videos that are coming through, right? My next recommendation, this says allow students to download and share. I'm going to turn that off. There's plenty of other ways for kids to share. A lot of kids are already using different social media tools. This is a personal preference to me, but if I'm having them do something as an assignment, I'm not necessarily going to let them just download their assignment and download their selfie, okay? Captions, display auto-generated captions. This can seem a little bit busy, but this will just show captions under the videos, okay? And the problem with that is that if students aren't in like my classroom where I have a designated space that's always quiet and they're using noise canceling headphones, if the videos play with an auto-generated closed caption, it may not pick up the words correctly. So I'm assuming that your kids have a good space at home to record from, but the truth is that, you know, we're all doing work and homework and all kinds of things in our kitchens and on our beds and all kinds of places. So I'm gonna take that off. You have grid followers, so allow students to receive email notifications when new topics are created. Okay, maybe I want them to be able to receive emails whenever I post a new topic. Do I want to make my grid active or hidden? Okay, so it even says hidden grids will not be accessible to your students. So you have to have it active. This is good, like if you've created a grid for one grade and then come June, you want to make it hidden. So you can change it to hidden. Here's your captions language, and then finally your themes. Okay, so once you make your changes, you're going to update your grid and you're good. All right, now let's create our topics. Let me just do a quick time check. And we're almost at the hour, I think. So let me just show you how to create the topic. And then I'm happy to stay on a few more minutes just to make sure that you're able to create your first Flipgrid. And I apologize, I wasn't paying attention to the time. Okay, so you're going to create your new topic. A topic is going to be some kind of an activity that you give your students, right? So I'm going to call this one our weekly book review. Now there are lots of other activities that you've had for your students. So you'll decide what you want to name your topic and the kind of activity. When you go to create your activity, you will be asked how long you want students to engage with that activity or how long you want that video to be. you know your kids best, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, depending on what you're asking them to do. Name a book you love and why you love it, okay? And then down here in the focus area, this is where you can record a video of yourself. So it can simply be you recording your instructions. You can upload a video that perhaps you have. Maybe there's a YouTube video that you want to bring in, a picture. Okay, you have all of these other options. And for my friend who noted that Nearpod, this is where you can bring in that Nearpod activity. Okay, so if I click on Nearpod, you can put your Nearpod link in here. Right. Now, after you pick the media that you want to pop up with your instructions, you can click on more options. Okay, and this topic tip, okay, remember to jot down what you are going to say. Okay, so I'm just going to give them a tip. This tip will show up when they're recording themselves. And in addition, I have the ability to attach other documents. So if I had a Google Doc that I wanted them to view, if I wanted to put in a link to another YouTube video, I could put that in here. You just put the link and you name it. All right. And then this is where you do video moderation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn video moderation on. I want my kids to be able to see my video and my activity, so I'm going to leave this active. This is your student-to-student replies. So this is, my recommendation will be in the beginning to turn this off, okay? Just so that you're the one giving feedback to the students first. You do have the ability to schedule when this shows up in the topic grid, right? And finally, you have some other options here. I usually turn off the view count, the likes, and the sticky notes. You know, there's a lot of research around children and how they feel when they don't have as many likes as somebody else. So I turn these off so that kids can't like each other's video. You know, I know you may disagree and that's fine. I usually turn off the social media pieces though, okay? I also take off the ability, I don't want them necessarily to put a video title in. I think especially for young kids, when they click on next and they go to submit the video, it gives them an opportunity to put a title to their video. Most students will probably leave it blank, but if it's in your instructions to put in a title, obviously you'll leave that up, okay? And then at the bottom here, you've got 2 different ways to give feedback. So Flipgrid already gives you a rubric with ideas and performance, or you can click on custom feedback and you can see that I've already added short response clarity. Okay, so I can decide to give it like a number from 1 to 3. And all of you who have created rubrics, this is pretty easy. You're just looking at your criteria title and the numbers, okay? So you can customize it, okay? Once your topic is done, you're just gonna click on create topic. And then this is where you can automatically share to Google Classroom. So your topic can automatically be posted to a Google Class. It'll simply bring up that little box where you get to pick your class in Google Classroom. The same thing with Microsoft Teams. So if you're logged into Teams, it'll bring up all your teams. Or if you're working directly with parents, you can just share it on Remind. So you can click on this and share that, okay? And I'm just gonna click on all set. All right, so this is your first topic in your grid. You can go back to your main grid details. And now what you should see is you should see the one that Flipgrid gave you, say hello on Flipgrid, and then it has your topic. Now what I love is that I can also go to the Discovery or the Disco library, it's really short for Discovery Library, and I can find other topics that other people have created. There are 16,000 of them, and I can simply go into subject, and I know that there's a language learning topic. So if I select language learning, there's 4,500 topics. So then I can start to narrow this down, right? And I can look through all these activities. When I find an activity that I like, right? So this is a read aloud, don't call me bear. If I like it, I can simply just select my grid, click on add, and then I can modify it at this point, okay? It takes me back to my grid, and I can modify the instructions, and I can change the focus areas, etc. So you can spend hours in the Disco library looking for things that other people have created. I have a few that I found that I think would be really good kind of across the board. So I will share those in an email back to Heather so that she can share it with all of you. All right, and I have some of my favorite topics. Here they are. It's a Word You Rather, My Typical Weekend, and a weekly book review. Okay, so those are kind of those are the basics of Flipgrid. There's so much more that you can do that we couldn't possibly cover in an hour, but I'm going to stop now and see if there's any questions. And again, apologize for taking you a bit over. Heather, are there any questions?
I'm seeing a thank you very much and very informative, and everybody has been enjoying it. We've had a request for a part two after people have had an opportunity to create their own grids and start exploring it. So that's something I'd like to, try to arrange with you if that's possible. I think, we had a lot of great questions that were a little more drilled down, a little specific that we could address. If they want to come back in part two, we can go back to those questions.
That sounds good.
Yeah, everyone said great job.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, we will take a look at the questions and respond back. So again, if you're part of this Zoom session, I'm sure you had to register somewhere. So I will send you I'll send you the Flipgrid Educator Guide link, which is awesome. Takes you step by step on how to create your topics. And I'll address as many questions as I can. I'm pretty sure that we can address most of them. So there'll be a document with answers to those questions, and then we'll get you a date for Flipgrid 2. All right.
Thank you so much, Blanca. This has really been so informative, and you can see how this is such a powerful tool for ELLs and using language in so many different ways. And we're so grateful to everyone for joining us today. And we'll keep you posted. I will email all the participants. I have everybody's registration information, and I'll share that information with you, everything that Blanca has mentioned.
All right, great. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today. And like I said, anybody who responded to that activity, I will get you some feedback so that you can see what that feedback looks like and you can engage with it. And we'll see you at part 2. Keep working hard, keep staying safe. I hope that everybody's well. Bye.
Thanks, Blanca.
Welcome. Thanks, Heather. Thanks for your help. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, everyone.